The Public Safety and Transportation Committee voted 8-0 in favor of prohibiting people from carrying guns onto certain public properties. Councilor Norton explains the proposed ordinance with Assistant City Solicitor Maura O'Keefe providing more detail.
Would prohibit the carrying of firearms into public buildings, public parks, and crowds. It would exempt public safety officers and public housing. Our purpose in docketing the item is to maximize the health, safety, and welfare of our residents. The Second Amendment, which we've been talking a lot about in the last few months, guarantees the right to bear arms, but it is not without limit. And we believe that this ordinance is a common sense limitation that says all residents should feel safe in our public buildings, our public spaces, and crowds. We know too well from so many headlines over the past decades that when people are allowed to bring firearms into all of those places, bad things can happen, resulting in injury or death, even mass death. So this is a very specific way that we can lower that risk. And to your point, Madam Chair, this is a very specific way that we can respond as well to the overwhelming number of residents who reached out to us in opposition to a gun store, in opposition to gun violence, that we can say, we heard you. And while there has been a difference of opinion among councilors strategically, as we've seen with the ban discussion or zoning, there really is not a difference of opinion about the desire to reduce gun violence and accessibility. And not once in our discussions over the last few months have I heard any councilors say they actually want to increase gun access. So the difference of opinion has really been about tactics. In this case, and Attorney O'Keefe will discuss this more, our law department feels that we are on solid ground in terms of putting up a barrier to guns in the public sphere that can add an additional layer of protection to the public when it comes to the risk from gun violence.
This ordinance represents what the law department believes to be an appropriate exercise of municipal police power, but balanced against the constitutional right of law-abiding citizens to keep and bear arms. This ordinance is also the product of not only the law department's research and experience, but collaboration, input, guidance, not just from our own police department, but also the experts from Everytown for Gun Safety. Now, the elements in this ordinance have been taken directly from lessons learned from Second Amendment case law, whether explicit or implicit. Explicitly, the Second Amendment jurisprudence tells us that the city may ban the carrying of a firearm within government buildings. Implicitly, this same history of case law indicates that the city may impose reasonable restrictions, not an absolute ban, but reasonable restrictions on firearms if the regulation substantially relates to an important government interest. Here, the city's important government interest is in protecting the health, welfare, and safety of its residents from the dangers inherent in gun use. This is of particular importance where people tend to gather. And it is for these reasons that the law department has drafted the language that it has. It's incumbent upon me as a member of the law department and the risk assessment team here for the city to let you know that aside from omissions, which might be here, I did second guess the inclusion of sections 1B and C. They were originally not in this ordinance. They were added after the consultation with the Everytown for Gun Safety people. But I do need to let you know that a similar ordinance with these inclusions and specifically a ban on the carrying of firearms in outdoor public spaces or in crowds on public space. Those are currently being challenged in the Virginia state court system. Fairfax County, Virginia has an ordinance similar in substance to this one, which has been the subject of a recent complaint and is currently being litigated. The law department is willing to take this particular risk because in our assessment, it fits squarely within current Second Amendment case law and jurisprudence in the First Circuit and within Massachusetts state courts to put these reasonable limitations on carrying firearms under certain circumstances and in very limited locations. This is not a criminal statute, that the police would not be able to arrest someone for violating this ordinance. I'll also add that every ordinance on the books does have a discretionary aspect to it, and the enforcing body here, the police department, would be expected to, and they'd be allowed within their own expertise and skill to evaluate the specific facts and circumstances of any incident and be able to make a determination about whether there's an actual violation here or some sort of technical violation that they would essentially let go of, where in these situations that you bring up.
To respectfully disagree with Ms. O'Keefe in one fashion, that ordinances in and of themselves are not arrestable. However, if we advise somebody that they're in violation of a city ordinance and they continue to break that or continue to violate that city ordinance, there is a Mass General Law 272, I think it's 59, that allows police officers to arrest for a violation of, again, a city ordinance if they don't comply. So it's very unlikely, but there is a possibility. So I don't want to mislead people by saying no one would ever be arrested.